Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Q&Ray. Today I'm joined by John. John, where are you from?
I am from Nashville, Tennessee.
Awesome. And then how long you been coaching?
Almost a decade. I would say about 7 years in the functional fitness space.
Nice. And then what were you doing before that?
Yeah, I was in high school. I was a high school tennis coach.
Okay.
I was able to be like a little camp counselor for like little kids, and then in college I was able to be a personal trainer for my 4 years, and then out of there I joined the functional fitness space with a gym in Nashville called Fit Factory.
Awesome.
And then from there, I've now spent the last almost 4 years coming up in January with a company called Iron Tribe, prioritize functional fitness in 45 minutes.
Awesome. Well, cool. Where do you want to focus our time today? Do you want to look at video? Do you want to ask questions? How do you want to do it? That's the time is
Let's start with the video since
Okay.
it looks like Zoom is working, and then from there we can fill it with questions.
Let's see what we can do. Hopefully it'll work. I did a video analysis session with my group last Thursday, and it literally didn't work the entire time, and it was really bad.
Yeah, and if that happens, cool. We'll just chat it out, go from there.
All right. Do you see this video? Is it playing?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's watch it. I'm gonna turn off the volume. Whoa, okay. I see 3 of them. Are they all like related to each other?
Yeah, so that I was just doing a split jerk progression. It was a 2-rep max, and so I wanted to show the videos that I failed at, just because I want to know what happened and what went wrong. There are the earlier videos. Show some of the successful lifts.
Okay.
So that one was where I failed for a 2-rep, and then I don't know. I was feeling froggy, so I went for a 1-rep max, and it didn't happen. But I had it up there, but I just didn't. It looked like I didn't lock out, and so like that was the first working set is what we're currently watching.
Okay, these look pretty good actually. So let's just watch this one more time, and then we'll go backwards again. So the first one we watched was actually your 1-rep max miss.
Yes.
I don't see a whole lot that I dislike here. Just for anyone who's watching and doesn't know what to look at first, I like to look at the feet first. That's just something I learned from Coach Bergner, is to always watch the feet, because 90% of missed lifts are from the feet. Here, the dip looks pretty dang solid.
Okay.
Most people, they might go down a little bit too far, and then they start to lose it and their hips shoot forward. But yours don't do that here. It actually looks pretty good. The drive is pretty good. Leg drive finishes. And then here, I like that your weight's on the back of the front foot instead of on the toe. So that's pretty good. And then you're pretty well stacked here. And then one thing that we like to say at our weightlifting course is front foot first. So FFF, which you do a good job of here, front foot first. And then the second route, let's watch the dip again, just looking at the feet. Ooh, there we go. Do you notice it's really subtle, but what do you notice right about here?
All right. So right now the video is currently paused on me walking my front foot back. I think I had like it was the first video.
Yeah.
So
that's what Zoom does to me these days.
That's okay.
Let's see if this is gonna happen. It's just gonna show it. Can you see it now? Is it moving at all?
Currently, you're starting screen sharing,
and then
I'm not seeing.
Yeah, that's what Zoom's been doing to me lately.
Yeah,
it's very annoying. Okay,
that's okay.
Just for the sake of your benefit, this won't show up on the recording because obviously we can't see it. But on the second rep, if you look really closely, just make a note of this so you can look at it later, since I can't show it to you right now.
Yeah.
Zoom's being stupid. But on the second rep, once you get towards the bottom of your dip, you start to get into your toes. You can see that your heel is coming off the ground. So that's you're starting to lose it that way, and then and it's not as powerful. And that's kind of a common thread between the other 2 sets that you sent me. This right here looks pretty good. Now, if you look on, so just make a note of this too. On your second rep, when you see on the second rep, you're kind of a little bit more arched in your low back there, trying to support the load overhead. Whereas on the first one, you were much more solid.
Okay.
You can see the stack is a lot better. So the stack on the first rep is good. The stack on the second rep is a little bit more low back archy. And it could just be the fact that you're tired. It's a second rep.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look at the second one. Maybe this one will show. If not, it's fine. But I'll just give you the feedback so you have it. And then we can go to
Perfect.
questions. But can you see the screen right now, or is it still saying sharing?
It's still saying that you've started the share.
Okay, cool. So I'll just watch it. It's really
That's okay.
all right. So on this one, the dip was pretty good. On the first one, overhead position was a little bit short stepped on the front foot. So front foot
Okay.
a little further forward, and then your back is arching pretty good here. And then you can tell that you're too much on that front foot and short step the front foot because now you're recovering forward instead of backwards.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually a pretty good indication that all your weight's on the front foot and it's too short of a step forward when you have to recover by stepping forward instead of stepping back.
Okay.
You see too that the front knee is not stacked over the heel as well as it was before. This tends to happen when it gets heavier. And on the second rep, let's see, on the second rep, the dip was really rushed. It was fast going down, probably feeling the weight is feeling heavy. And then
more patience.
Yeah, more patience in the dip. The dip can be slower. Doesn't, like I say, slow dip, explosive out of the bottom. Here, same thing, like back is arched. And you can see you're struggling with it. And then you step forward again on this one. All right.
Okay.
And then the last one is where I'm gonna direct most of our time to after as we discuss.
Oh, there it is. I see something.
Is it playing?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're back with video. So on this third one here, let's watch the dip. Okay, so again, rushed into the bottom. You see how quickly he went down, went whoop, boom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, control that dip. For me, when I dip too fast, what ends up happening is the bar loses my shoulders and end up crashing it on the way up instead of staying in contact with the bar.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to me sometimes where I'll dip so fast, the bar will stay there and then I'll collide with the bar on the way up, and that's no bueno. So control the dip a little bit more on the way down. I like how you're staying nice and stacked, shoulders, hips, and heels. They're pretty good here. On the bottom, do you see where everything started to roll forward? Right there.
Okay, yes.
So you're rolling into the front of your feet, a little bit too deep on the dip. On the drive is still pretty good, but watch your foot placement. Actually, on that one, it was actually better than the set before, where it didn't force up as much. But here, look at how arched you are here.
Yeah.
Now, this tends to happen when the weight gets heavy, and this is where I'm going to start talking about structure. So still a little bit too much load on the front foot, and then you're notice you're going to trying to recover, and your elbows are wobbling. There's and good job getting out of the way and not dying. Okay, so
thanks.
Well, so here's what the technique is there. Okay, I would say that your technique is there. It starts to fall apart when it gets heavy. You start to kind of collapse under the load in the dip, and then in the drive phase, it's pretty good. But when you have to lock it out overhead, that's where you start to lose it. So a couple of things for me, like I still coach weightlifting, I still coach CrossFit. I love those two methodologies. But lately I've been focusing a whole lot on the strong fit principles as far as movement principles and like body recruitment of certain musculature to support a certain position. You know, I used to be really into Kelly Starrett back in the early 2010s. You know, position was everything. You know, we're all about position. Creating position is great. It's important. You have to be able to have the hardware before you can apply the software. So most people have the hardware, and that's what Mobility WOD was great at creating. I haven't really followed much of Ready State, but I think from what I've heard, Kelly is starting to move into the tension thing too. But position without tension is nothing. Like a lot of people will squat heels to butt all the way down, but have no tension, and that's why you have the knee and all kinds of stuff. So you have all the hardware. You have all the hardware to create the shapes and stuff like that, but I'm not sure that you have the hardware as far as structure. So what the strong fit guys have done is they've broken down the body into two separate torque chains. Okay, we call them. Let me see if the share will work here. Otherwise, I'll just superimpose the graphic onto the recording. But here you go. Can you see this?
Hey, there you go.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we've broken down the body into 2 torque chains, external torque and internal torque. The way I like to describe these is that the internal torque chain are the muscles that are meant to keep things close to your body. They're your structural muscles. They're the muscles that are meant for long time under tension and stabilization. Okay. The red muscles tend to be the muscles that are more explosive in nature, short time under tension, more explosiveness. But if you look at this graphic, which muscles do you feel most of your athletes tend to overuse and tend to foam roll, use a lacrosse ball on? Which muscle?
Yeah. So the muscles that I would see foam rollers being used the most on is like lower back,
Mhm.
or like just backside. Then a lacrosse ball is usually on like front of shoulder. So
Mhm.
like anterior shoulder. And then I would do calf would be the next
So what color?
thing
Red
that
or
I would,
yellow?
yeah, all red so far,
All reds.
if I'm seeing this so far, or seeing
Yeah.
this right.
So it tendency is all reds. Most people have to foam roll the reds. And the way I describe this to people is, I mean, people who are familiar with SMR basically what it does, it tells the nervous system to shut down and relax that muscle. And so what you have are people who are overactive reds, underactive yellows. So when you feel like you need to foam roll, you're basically feeling your body's out of balance. So when you foam roll, you're effectively relaxing the reds. So now your reds and yellows match. Whereas instead, I feel it's more useful to activate the yellow, so now you're matched up.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes.
I mean, I used to foam roll all the time, and now I
Yeah.
don't anymore. And like a lot of and I used to teach the CrossFit flexibility seminar where we talked about reciprocal inhibition and stuff like that. You're familiar with
Yes.
that, where like if you contract one side, it allows the other side to relax.
Yes.
In the same vein, it's like if your hamstring is tight and doesn't want to do something, flex the quad. Like it'll
Yeah.
cause the hamstring to relax. In the same way, if you're overusing the red muscles, activate the yellow so that they pick up the slack and allows the reds to relax and not do everything. It seems pretty basic to me. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, but thinking that way is kind of revolutionary, because I would pull myself under the thought of like, oh, your lower back's hurting. That's, there's probably systems in the chain that need to be altered. But yeah, let's foam roll the back instead of like, hey, let's get
Right.
the front side stronger.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, a lot of times for me, I've started doing assessments where I look at people, the way they move, the way they hold weight overhead. Like one of the tests that we do, the eye test, is we have someone hold a plate over their head with a 45-pound plate and
Yeah.
let them fatigue to the point where their body starts to compensate in the way it's most natural to it. And what you'll
Yeah.
start to see is people's upper trap will take over, their mid back is huge and fighting for all those positions, and they start to arch, which is kind of what happened to you. As the weight
Yeah.
started to get heavier, you start to arch there to kind of get into that position there. Something has to take over because another muscle's not doing its job. And in the end, it really is. The StrongFit guys call it balancing the arch. So most people, I would say most people in general, doesn't matter what workout method you use, people tend to be very hyperactive on the red muscles, the external torque chain.
Yeah.
Those red muscles are also associated with the sympathetic nervous system. So people tend to be hyper stressed out all the time. Like when
Yeah.
people get stressed out, where do they carry the tension? A lot of times low back and traps, right?
Yes.
Um, and the yellow
Yeah.
muscles tend to be associated with the parasympathetic nervous system, which is more like the flow state, like feelings of safety and feelings of like a regeneration and stuff like that. So a lot of what we teach in the movement side of things is very deeply rooted in the nervous system. So
Okay.
a lot of people are very much hyperactive in anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff. And so what we're trying to do is bring balance to the force, if you will, you know?
Okay.
So the first thing I do with people is I try to teach them how to first, I mentioned this last night on Instagram. Actually, this video will show up maybe a month from now because I have a
Yeah.
few of these that I recorded. But as of last night, I posted something on Instagram that was somewhat inflammatory to some people, and they were like, "Oh my God, you're such an asshole," blah blah blah,
Yeah.
you know. And but sometimes I post things like that just to see what people will say.
You need to be stretched. Yeah. You
Yeah,
need to be pushed outside your comfort zone. Yeah.
yeah, and so and sometimes like people don't respond to other things I post. It's just curious to me, like, what are people gonna respond to? So I posted that.
Yeah.
Anyway, the whole premise of that post was people need to learn how to breathe.
Yeah. I saw that.
And the way that you breathe will put you in a different nervous system state. If you're constantly mouth breathing, that
Yeah.
puts you into sympathetic nervous system, which is all those red muscles.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched boxers or MMA fighters?
Yes, from time to time.
Have you ever heard it said that as soon as you see a fighter breathe through their mouth, you know they're done?
I haven't heard that phrase, but that makes sense.
It's one of those things that is thrown out around a lot. Like fighters need to control their breath. As soon as they lose their breath, your brain basically does this. When it starts to notice your mouth breathing, your brain's like, well, we're gonna die. Let's cut off some resources. So the first couple of resources that your brain lets go of are higher thinking skills and muscle coordination. So it's like when you're doing a skill session with people doing the snatch, they look pretty good for the first few reps because they're calm, they're collected, they're doing like one rep at a time. And then you say 3, 2, 1, go, and all of a sudden like, oh, all stressed out. And then all their coordination goes out the window. What happened? Well, their nervous system state changed. They went from a safe place to this huge place of anxiety. Am I going to be able to finish this workout in time? Is this person going to be faster than me? Can I even lift this weight 30 times or whatever it is? Their state changes, and then what ends up happening is the brain's like, okay, as soon as the state changes, and that's usually precipitated by the way they breathe. As soon as the mouth breath happens, it's like, okay, well now this high function thinking and skill stuff is going to go out the window, and we're just trying to not die.
Yeah.
So the breath matters. Anyway, going back to your application, what I've noticed is that if we look at this graphic again, when you start to go overhead, when the weight gets heavy and your body gets stressed, you start going more to your low back. You saw how you arched your back?
100%. 100%. Yes.
In this area here. So mid back, low back. Sometimes people go overhead and they're traps or shrugging up into stuff. Whereas what that tells me is you probably have some opportunity for growth here in teres major. And then in here, so external oblique, low abs, that kind of stuff is what we call the structure. So the yellow muscles are our structural muscles. Whereas right now, as soon as the weight gets heavy and your body's stressed, you tend to rely on all the red muscles. And have you ever seen people when they go overhead, they can't straighten their elbow?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that happens a lot. And one of the connections I made is that if you put all these muscles, so for example, my favorite way to teach overhead position now is go like this, right? And then flex the bicep. What happens when you flex the bicep?
Yeah, I have to. I feel like my elbows have to lock out.
Okay.
I'm feeling more stability through starting from my middle of my back throughout my whole arm, rather than just relying on my shoulder.
Yeah. What other muscle turns on when you do that? As soon as you flex the bicep.
Yeah, I would say my lats, my ROMs.
Your pecs too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that you mention it.
All that stuff, if we go back to the graphic here, tell me what color they are, yellow or red?
Yellow.
And so what I've done too here is if you look at this, we've always talked about external rotation, right? But I can create a position but have no tension. You see how this is not on? I'm just twisting. Yeah. But as soon as if I go here, if I squeeze it, you see how my arm actually rotates into external rotation?
Yeah.
So it's position does not guarantee tension. Tension will create a position. I can fake a position all day long. In fact, I did it for years. When I did my assessment with Richard, he's like, bro, you don't know how to hinge, man. I'm like, what do you mean I don't know how to hinge? I've been doing CrossFit since 2007.
Push for hips back, that's it.
I teach all this stuff. What are you talking about? He's like, bro, you're just moving your low back for everything. Like you're flexing and extending your spine, not actually hinging at the hip. Like Kelly Starrett used to talk about the one joint rule. Like I was not using that one joint. I was using multiple joints in my low back to create a shape because I'm an athlete and I know how to create shapes because I know that's what's expected of me. But it's possible to do things a certain way that's not correct. And once I start to learn how to create that tension, look, it actually creates the position I'm after. The same thing with like the deadlift. I would create the position but had no glutes or hamstrings to support the system. And so what do? I go to low back. In fact, every time do you know the workout Diane?
Yes. Yeah.
So every time I did Diane, my low back on the right side would blow up every single time. And the reason for that is that my right glute would never come to the party and my mid back had to take over. I never knew how to use my glutes or use my hamstrings until I started to actually focus my attention on turning them on and figuring out how to connect to them. There's people. Go ahead.
Yeah, a question of curiosity. Because I'm learning. I have a weak a pull off the ground with my deadlifts.
Yep.
Once I get into my knees, I can lock it out. Like pretty confident in that. It's just breaking the bar off the ground, and I'm learning that I don't utilize my glutes and hams like right at the start. I try to yank or like just pull up with
Lift
my
through the
back
back.
instead of push down. And I was just curious, how did you start to build the mind muscle connection between the glute and ham?
Yeah, so there's a couple factors there. Number one is that the glute is going to, or just like any muscle in particular. Okay, I literally use this analogy every Q&Ray call I've done in the last month or so. Make a bicep. Okay, make a bicep right now. It's easy to find the connection to the bicep when the arm is here, right?
Right.
Now straighten your elbow a little bit more and try to create that same connection. Can you do it?
I don't feel like I can get a bigger peak here rather
Exactly. So as the muscle gets longer, the ability to connect to that muscle becomes a little bit more diminished. Right? A shorter muscle is going to be a lot easier to connect with. This is why when you watch people do front squats, you ever see people go, they kind of clap. Well, the reason for that is the structure for the front squat is this external oblique and this low ab. And the reason why it shortens is because it's, holy crap, this is heavy. I need to shorten to find tension. And what that does, it creates a position that's not exactly great for sport, but it's what's required in order for that muscle to contribute to the load. It's the same reason why the knees cave in when people squat. The inside of their legs are weak, so they have to shorten to find tension. So the solution to the problem is not to say knees out, like we've heard so many times before.
Right.
No, let's create more strength in the hamstring. Particularly the semimembranosus, the inside head of the hamstring there.
Yeah.
And then for the deadlift in particular, this one's a challenging one, is that stand up right now and squeeze your butt cheeks together.
Yeah.
You can feel the clench, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now bend over slightly at the waist. Now try to clench.
Yeah, it's a bit harder.
Now bend over more. Like a deadlift setup. Now clench your butt cheeks together. Can you do it?
Yeah, not as good as
good.
Yeah.
The basic idea there is that as the muscle lengthens, it lowers the capacity for it to contract in a meaningful way. And so this is why people tend to have to resort to using their back until the butt can actually get to a place where it can contract. You see it happen in the kettlebell swing all the time. People start their kettlebell swing by lifting with their low back, and then at the very end they clench their butt cheeks because that's where their mobility of the glute is. You know, we talk about mobility, at least in my world, the way I describe mobility is your mobility is the range of motion that your muscle can move with connection, with contraction. And stretching and contraction are not the same thing. Have you ever been taught to hinge by sending your butt back and to feel a stretch in your hamstring?
Yeah.
Okay, so the stretch on the bicep, for example, I use the bicep all the time because it's easy to see here. A stretch here, if you pull my arm, I can feel the stretch on the bicep, but that is not the same as contraction when it's here. Those are two different tensions. And so the problem with a lot of people is that when they start the deadlift, they don't have the glutes because the glute has been stretched past the point where they can actually connect with it. And you see people when they squat too, people start and it looks good, and all of a sudden, tucks underneath, right?
Yeah.
Because now the glutes run out of range. It can't contribute to the load anymore. So someone else has to pick up the slack to continue the range of motion. And what is that? That's the hip flexor has to shorten. And now the pelvis tucks under.
Yeah, this is great.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, such a simple idea, but it's very powerful. I've never thought of it like this.
People don't think about this because we're so used to simple things like position, like knees out. Okay, what does knees out really do? Yes, it keeps the knee healthy. I agree with that. That's great.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's a band-aid for a beginner.
Right.
Really what needs to happen is that we teach people how to use their body and how to feel their body. And like that's a big premise for me, is that as a coach, I care more about you knowing what a movement's supposed to feel like versus you creating a shape that will make me happy because it looks safe. There are things that I do now in my training. I'll show you a video of this. This is kind of funny. Like people really, really hate on this stuff. Let me see if I can find the video. Okay, here. So this is my friend Sarah. She's showing a sandbag deadlift. This looks very wrong compared to what we teach in CrossFit.
Right.
Because her back is in a rounded shape.
Right.
Yes? Okay. As she moves to the deadlift, I want you to tell me yes or no. Does her spine stay the same as she moves? Does her spine change at all?
From the looks of it, no. Like the shoulders stay in the same line with the
So
hip.
is that midline stabilization?
Yeah.
So there's no change really. I mean, there's a teeny tiny bit. If you're gonna be really nitpicky here, there's a teeny tiny bit. And the way that I see that is if I look at her shirt, I look for the crinkles to change.
Yeah.
Okay. But in general, let's pretend this is a perfect repetition. She is
Right.
keeping in a trunk flex position, but all of the flexion and extension happens at the hip.
Yeah.
So it's a very isolated and safe movement. However, I've done this exercise at Coach Bergner's garage, and I've had people tell me that looks unsafe. That looks dangerous. Well, don't do that.
Right.
Why are you doing that? And I go, my spine is not changing. There is no changing forces on my spine. My spine is fine. What I'm doing here is, you notice where her hips are when she moves? Where are they related to her feet?
It looks like her hips are right on top of her heels, or right in line with the heels.
Yes. And you can actually see the pelvis turning. The pelvis is actually turning, right?
Yeah.
Which is very different from what an average CrossFitter will do or average functional fitness person will do. Is most people, when they do their hinge, they send their butt way back and they arch their back.
Yeah.
And that's called a hinge. Like, dude, there's no hinging happening there. There's just this huge extension of the spine and your butt went back to counterbalance. And that's why I look at the feet first. The feet are a great indicator of where the tension is in the body. When you watch most CrossFitters, where is their weight in their feet? It's all in their heels. And it's because we've been taught heels down for posterior chain engagement. That's not incorrect. It's incomplete.
Yeah.
So we do want heels down for posterior chain engagement, but we also want that big toe knuckle, the ball of the foot to stay. So Coach Bergner, we say big toe, little toe, heel, so full foot on the ground.
Yes.
As soon as you lift that big toe off the floor, you really just counterbalancing now. You're not actually creating tension. And so if you look at that video of Sarah again, what she's doing, if you just look at her feet, it's hard to tell because of the way the lighting is here, but her feet are grounded in, and one cue that I like to use is I like to say, pretend like you have a med ball between your knees, squeeze the med ball, but don't let your knees come in.
Yeah.
So you've created a position of external rotation, but you're creating torque on the inside of the leg. And it's pulling, I think when I do deadlifts, I think of pulling the floor together.
Okay.
And that will fire. What that does essentially is it'll fire this muscle right here. You'll feel this inside head of the hammy turn on right here, right? The meaty middle part of the hamstring towards like the middle of your leg. That's where you'll feel it. And that the way that these muscles work is they work as a chain. They don't work as individual muscles per se. They're a chain. So remember when I had you do this thing where I said flex the bicep?
Yeah.
Right? So what ended up happening was this turned on, but also this and this turned on, right? They came on together. And so it's not necessarily I'm flexing my bicep. I flex my bicep and then you get the teres major, you get the pec major together too, right? So it's a torque chain. When you turn on one, you get all the other ones connected to it. Some of them to a lesser degree, but in general, they all fire together to support each other. So what I tend to tell people is like, especially for women who have a hard time finding their pecs, like my wife can do this and a few women I know can do this, but not a lot of women can find their pecs. So what I'll do is I'll say, hey, flex the bicep and just focus on that. Focus on the muscle in the chain that you can find, and eventually those will come to play.
And then have it lead to it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you might have to do some focused work to actually access that musculature to build it up if it's deficient. I need to full circle now because we're out of time. Going back to your video, what's ended up happening as the weight gets heavy is what you're missing, and this is what I'll encourage you to work on, is you're missing a little bit of this teres major. You're probably missing some pec. Like you're able to make your pec stance, but if you're honest with yourself, your mobility overhead is not that far. So a great way to test your pec mobility is to flex your pec. So flex your pec. Is it on right now? Just tap in it.
Yeah.
Feel it.
Yeah.
Now inhale through your nose and lift your arm up until you can't feel the pec turn on. How hard can you get and still have the pec on?
I'm starting to lose it right here.
Right about there. Is that overhead?
Yeah. No,
it's not.
I felt my back start to spasm.
Yeah, it's here. You're not actually here. And so what ends up happening is your body's like, well, crap, I need to compensate now to create this shape you're forcing me to do. And so, yes, so now you compensate to go to mid back, low back. Your body is smart. It's going to compensate to complete the task, but not necessarily do it correctly. And what ends up happening is it has to do that because the muscles that are supposed to do that role are not contributing like they should be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
So for you, my recommendation would be to focus on this stuff. It's like teres major, pec major, being able to develop the mobility to go overhead and still be on tension in those muscles is going to be key for you, so that you can stabilize that heavy weight when it gets over your head. The reason why, let me go fall back on this thing, is the reason why people tend to bend their elbows overhead when they can't, when they go overhead and their elbows are like bent. You ever see people do that? It's because the pec and the teres are not firing, so someone else in the chain has to turn on. In order for the bicep to find tension, it must shorten. For the same reason that people's knees dive in because the inside head of the hammy is not strong, it has to shorten to find tension. So if you can get people to figure out how to use this, and this, then they'll be able to straighten their elbow. I've done this at level 1 seminars where it's like, I can't straighten my elbows. I go, all right, instead of trying to shrug the bar up, I want you to think about breaking the bar. Like bending the living crap out of it. And what does that turn on? It turns on your pecs. It turns on your pecs, your short head of the bicep and the teres. And then lo and behold, they're able to straighten their elbow. They're like, well, that's weird. Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's tension, not position. Like, you can fake positions all day long. But as soon as you turn on the right musculature, it'll create the position that you want.
Yeah.
So your homework is to YouTube, go on like StrongFit and look like YouTube StrongFit rope pull. This one is something that I give to people all the time. So I do remote coaching too. And it's a really odd thing to think that I need to do pulls to improve my pressing. But let me show the video just so everyone knows what I'm talking about. I need to switch YouTube accounts real quick. Okay, so if I go to rope pull StrongFit, and then what you get is this weird French guy with a funny accent you can't understand, who's like one of the coolest people I know. And then you get this dude who's just, that's Richard. So this is, if you watch here, he's
excellent torque. He's going to keep his shoulders down, not engaging his traps.
Not engaging the traps is huge. People like live too much in the traps. You notice that his feet are super wide. This is actually another great scaling option for legless rope climbs because it teaches you how to use the same musculature. But wide stance, back stays parallel to the floor, and you're thinking about elbowing yourself in the junk. And what you're doing here is effectively you are focusing on this torque chain right here as you're doing the movement. So short head of the bicep, pec major, teres. A lot of times people will want to cheat because they get tired and they'll start lifting up their chest. But what does that mean? Now they're going to low back, they're going to traps, they're going back to the shoulder. So teaching people how to develop the yellow chain of muscles is what's going to help people in the long run. When I first met Julian, it was like, when was it? It was like August of 2017. He and I did a FaceTime call for an hour because Coach went to a seminar. And back then I was all about knees out, spread the floor on the squats, which is fine for things like wide stance, like power lifter squats, like Louis Simmons style stuff, because on that range of motion, you are all explosive muscles. And for a lot of those guys, when they compete, they wear suits, which in effect do what the yellow muscles are supposed to do. So you don't really need to do that part. That the suit does that for you. So you just have to focus on the reds, which makes sense in that context. But for a CrossFitter who is squatting below parallel, or a weightlifter who is squatting below parallel out of necessity, if you try to spread the floor with your teeny tiny glute med, like you've seen people have those band things around their knees to squat and stuff like that. It's like, well, crap, you're only training 1/4 of the squat. The descent of the squat is all yellow muscles. The halfway up on the deep squat is all yellow muscles, and the last quarter is red. That's when you switch. Now, when I met Julian, he told me this, and I was like, I don't believe you. I've been doing this for a long time. He's like, if you keep doing that, you're gonna F up your hip. I'm like, no, my hips are fine. But you know what's really sad is that literally a month ago, like November of last year, we're in January now. I remember that the summer that I met Julian, I was voodoo flossing my hip together to squat because my hips were so jacked up. And in fact, where the pain was on my glute med and my groin, which are, if you look at the graphic, all red muscles. So I'm asking these teeny tiny muscles to stabilize 380 on a deep squat consistently, like twice a week. I'm squatting close to 400 for sets. And I'm asking let's go back to the graphic and then we'll end with this. This teeny tiny glute med to do the stabilization and all that time under tension under a whole lot of load. Whereas I could have been using this big old muscle and this big
Yep.
old muscle. And it's just, I mean, it's simple science. Like these muscles are a lot bigger and this one's teeny tiny and its job is for explosiveness, not long time under tension. And so I have a real problem with there's people out there in the fitness space that are trying to sell you on, you don't need to learn how to find your muscles. You don't need to learn how to do this. It's like all they're trying to do is get you hooked on 12 weeks of programming and rebuild it every 12 weeks versus my goal is to help people develop independence where it's like, hey, you know your body better than I do because you live in it all day long. I need you to develop the awareness of what your body is feeling like
How
in
to
a
use
moment
it. Yeah.
and how to use it. It's more valuable to me as a human being. I mean, it's valuable to me as someone who's trying to make a living selling programming for you to be dependent on me. I just give you things and just do it blindly, right? But if my goal is to make people better, then it makes more sense for me to give them the tools so they can do it themselves. Like as a coach, my goal is to make people, my students, become better than me. So like Sarah Lewis, the girl I showed you doing the sandbag deadlifts, I started coaching her maybe 3-4 years ago when she was a brand new coach, and now she's much better than me. She's a much better eye. She's much better with people. She's just much better in general, and that's really where I come from. That's my why in coaching. So I think in general in the fitness space, it's hard because you got a lot of people who are about, hey, let's make money, let's do this, let's do that. I'm like, dude, I really don't care. I just want someone to be able to get off the toilet without, or go to the toilet without having someone to help them. You know, it's a different philosophy, right?
Yeah.
That's why I love what Julian and Richard are doing, because their whole thing is like, actually, their entire why is helping people with depression and anxiety. And all that is tied into like the red and yellow muscles.
Yeah.
It's crazy how like, and a lot of stuff that they're figuring out is all very well connected with like the chakras and Eastern science and things like that Eastern people have been doing all the time. But we Westerners think that's voodoo and weird. But that's the way the body is designed. If anyway, I can rant about this all day long, but in general, I think you have all of the basic tools to do the split jerk and do it well.
Yeah.
I would focus on developing the structure. But what I would caution you to do is don't get overzealous in going in too far in one direction. So as a weightlifter, I was very good with the red muscles because I use them all the time. I was deficient in the yellows. But then what ended up happening was I spent so much time focusing on the yellows that I lost my reds. And now I'm in this place where I've swung the opposite direction and I'm slowly trying to rebuild the other way to create balance. So I'm that type of personality where once I learn something that I dig in deep and I'm just like a terrier and don't let go of it. And so I'm really good at holding a sandbag in this position, but going overhead, I'm relearning it and it's kind of frustrating. So that's all I'm gonna give you is learn the thing, but remember the word balance.
Okay.
Cool.
No, thank you so much for your time. Yeah. I got a lot of questions. I would say the best 3 cues that you have, or the cues that you use the most in your own coaching, like what would they be?
Breathe.
Yep.
If you don't breathe, you die.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. It's like you'll first pass out is what's gonna happen. But at the end of the day, in general, like if you're not breathing, your body is gonna switch to a mode like, holy crap, we're gonna die. Let's shut off all the things so that we just don't die, and anything else is just superfluous. I don't care that you need to put this snatch over your head or that you need to do these pull-ups or whatever it is. We're gonna die, and I don't care about what you're doing. We're just gonna shut down. So breathing is key. Like that's literally the first thing I teach people to do. I said that I look at people's feet, but when I'm in person with people, I listen to their breath. I listen to, are they breathing? Are they holding their breath? Are they?
Yeah.
That's the first thing. So breathe, dang it. The second one, the second cue I give all the time is the phrase, it depends. It's super hard for coaches. I know for a fact that people have a hard time following Julian and Richard because they're so very much about go explore, go do the thing and try it out. Like Richard, he's the worst. He put me on blast on a podcast. Not in a bad way, but he's just like, Ray, like he just has been spending the entire year trying to digest the month he spent with us. And that the truth of it is that, yes, like spending a month with them was crazy. And I haven't really watched many of the new podcasts because I'm still trying to digest the stuff that I learned. And it's just so deep and rich. And, but where was I going with this? It depends. These guys are hard for people because they have it depends attitude. It's like everyone's gonna be different. You need to figure out what works best for you, and it's your body. You need to learn how to use it. Whereas a lot of
Yes.
coaches, a lot of athletes just want you to spoon feed them the stuff.
Yeah.
And
Just tell me what you need me to do and I'll do it.
exactly, and that's not gonna make you better. There are so many people who do training to escape their world. It's their way of escaping the stuff that they don't want to deal with. But the
Exactly.
problem is that if you don't deal with your stuff, it's gonna haunt you forever.
Right.
When I did my assessment with Richard, we found out why. And I'm going off a total tangent now.
It's okay.
Things that they figured out is that there's a lot of connection between muscle dysfunction and also your emotional state. Like a lot of times, if your glutes don't work, there's I'm giving away too much. I'm not supposed to give away this stuff, but the idea is that sometimes like associated with the glutes is like on the right side, for example. When people tell me that their right butt's not working or whatever, I go, or if their low back is bothering them, there's a big one. Okay, let me just go there. I'll ask them, who are you pissed at, man? Like, what feelings have you been repressing that you're holding down? Sometimes there's this book that's called The Body Keeps the Score. It's by a psychologist, and he's made connections too, where like you'll see muscle dysfunction or deficiency related to emotional traumas and things like that.
Yeah.
During my assessment, I realized in the midst of carrying a sandbag that I was really pissed off at somebody. And the purpose of bringing these things up is not to make you relive them, but more of the point of, hey, you need to deal with this thing so it doesn't hold you down
and address it.
and address it. Like there's a difference between enduring and doing. There's a difference between like enduring and accepting something. Like I didn't confront this person about this thing, but in my own head, I came to a place where I'm okay with this now. And I'm not gonna let this bother me anymore. And lo and behold, things got better. Like my back doesn't blow up anymore when I do deadlifts. My glutes are coming in. It's interesting. It's super interesting. Like, and like going back to that whole point of like these guys, their whole thing is they want to help people with depression and anxiety.
Yes.
And the thing with training is that how many people do you see in the gym come in just to escape their life?
A lot.
My ex-girlfriend trained 3 times a day because she was so anxious. It was the only time she was able to like push her feelings away and just feel something else. And so that's the other thing is like, it depends. People need to come in the gym. And my follow-up post to the inflammatory post I posted last night was, hey man, it depends. Like as a coach, your job is to freaking read the room. Your job is to tell that this person is having a bad day. So you just help them feel safe and help them have a good time. This person is super stressed out, has a lot of anxiety and needs to express that. How can you help them express that? This person is depressed and needs a win. So you give them something that where they feel accomplished. So that's where it depends comes from. That's a long answer to it depends. Third Q I like to say is those are my only 2.
Oh, those were great.
I think the third one is really just make people feel safe. That's where stronghold comes from, actually. That's what the word stronghold comes from. It's from the Bible, Psalm 18:2. It's my refuge, my safe place. And so that's why I use that name, because everywhere I go, whoever I coach, my first goal with them is for them to feel safe with me. And then when they feel safe with me, they're gonna learn. And that's the biggest thing. Like a lot of people come into your gym because they're looking for a safe place, and that's first and foremost.
No, that
feel safe to fail.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Appreciate the insight and all the help. I can't tell you how much that this has been like, one, getting back to the basics, but 2, there are things that I need to think about that I don't currently think about. And it's not until somebody tells me like, hey, have you thought about this? That I can actually, start to implement in my life. So it's like, I can't, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. You know what? I'm actually going to bump this recording up because I was really stoked with this call. I'm going to post this in 2 days. So you'll see it right away.
Awesome.
So
Man, that's so cool.
Watching right now, we're not going to wait a whole month. We're going to, this stuff is good. All right. Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
And I'll see you later. Fist bump.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Bye.